In this video, Dr. Mullen will look at the horoscope for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes story. She will explore his interest in the psychic, and as we see here, a picture taken from the internet shows him in the center with a phantom figure from another dimension.
One of the most interesting and intriguing applications of astrology is to look at the horoscopes of historical figures that we enjoy. Political figures in modern times, ancient figures, they all had astrology charts. And one of the most fascinating people to me was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. He was an explorer and spiritualist, as well as an author, and he was a medical doctor. Although his name usually brings to mind Sherlock Holmes, the eccentric and brilliant detective character he created, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was also an enthusiastic communicator with the afterlife and psychic phenomena. He was born in Edinburgh, Scotland on May 22nd, 1859 at 4:55 a.m. into a middle-class family. Sir Arthur epitomized the sunshine of the British Empire, the times of Queen Victoria and King Edward VII. He was a well-spoken, confident, very tall gentleman. Doyle was true to the dual and multifaceted nature of the Gemini, though. His birth sign, he was an avid reader from childhood on. He studied abroad in Austria, and after graduation from the University of Edinburgh Medical School, he sought excitement and sailed off to the Arctic as a ship's doctor. This is almost too much of an adventure, though. After fighting off a shark, a fire aboard the vessel, and typhoid fever, he returned barely alive and resolved to stay safely on dry land for the rest of his life. He opened a medical practice in Portsmouth, England. He was born right on the cusp between Taurus and Gemini with his sun. That's the most important point in the birth chart. The chart that part of the chart that most of us know right away was right at 0 Gemini. And this gave great complexity of character because he wasn't only the twins of the Gemini, but the third place of the Taurus. He could be a pragmatic scientist and physician, but he was also a talented storyteller. His sun was conjunct the planet Uranus. That means right near it. That's an aspect that's extremely powerful. The combination of the sun combines with Uranus. This shows originality and an affinity for the occult. Many astrologers will have the sun conjunct Uranus. Doyle was what was called a double Gemini. That means his ascendant or rising sign was the same as his sun. People that are born near sunrise of any birth sign are a double, usually a double Pisces, a double Capricorn, whatever, as long as they're born near sunrise. He had Mars in Gemini rising or right on his ascendant. Now the ascendant or rising sign is why astrologers always want to know where and when someone is born. It's the zodiac sign rising in the east at the hour of birth, along with the sun and the moon signs. The ascendant is one of the 3 key factors for analyzing or understanding a birth chart. And with Gemini rising and the sun in Gemini, Mars, the energy planet there, is indicative of a very forceful, dynamic, high-energy person with a lot of leadership ability. His Mars also conjoined his Jupiter. The Mars-Jupiter conjunction has been called the President's Conjunction. President Kennedy had it, and a number of other U.S. presidents have it. It gives a magnanimous personality. It has been said to give the type of personality the rest of us mortals pray for. The benevolent fixed star Rigel associated with honors and riches, is located near the natal Mars ascendant and Jupiter in A. Conan Doyle's chart. This all combines enough of assertiveness and motivation to impact the entire world. Throughout his whole life, A. Conan Doyle gained much knowledge and wisdom through his many different experiences. He was born with the planet Saturn in Leo in his third house, showing pride and dignity, as well as an urge to share thoughtful, meaningful communication. By 1891, he gave up his medical practice to write full-time. His Mercury was conjunct Pluto in Taurus, showing persistence and depth of thought, as well as a love of music. The sign of Taurus relates to the ears, and many individuals with Taurus prominent are gifted singers or gifted in other types of musicality. And, of course, we always relate Sherlock Holmes to the violin, a popular musical instrument of the ages. It was Doyle's detective stories in the forms of The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes which catapulted him to fame and earned an untold level of income along the way. His life suddenly crumbled into chaos when his beloved first wife, Louise, developed tuberculosis and died. Then Kingsley, his oldest son, also perished. With 6 placements in the 12th house, that's the sector of the birth chart that relates to disappointment and sorrows, and secrets and institutions, Doyle, who was always prone to depression, nightmares, and mood swings, became particularly troubled after these tragedies. His life was punctuated by extremes. Think of the Gemini twins, always joy and tragedy. His father's alcoholism and eventual mental illness shadowed him from childhood on, and it was following many setbacks that he became very interested in psychic phenomena. It was the time of the rise of the spiritualist religion around the world, a belief that began in the 1840s in upstate New York, that we could communicate and be surrounded by and gain guidance from those in the afterlife. He embraced the study of the paranormal, and with Venus in Aries, he also had an affinity for the military. Doyle felt drawn to serve his country as a medical doctor, and after volunteering for service in the Royal Army during the Boer War, he was knighted in 1902. That's where the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle comes in, by King Edward VII. At that time, highlights in his life, Jupiter was transiting over his Aquarius placements. He had the moon, natal moon in Aquarius, and it activated a trine to Pluto, which was transiting his ascendant in Gemini. Following World War I, Doyle's second wife, Jean, joined him in his efforts to reunite bereaved families with the spirits of beloved husbands, fathers, and brothers who had been killed in battle. Spiritualism is always very active during the time of war, when spirit entities who didn't expect to pass away finally find themselves on the other side. Neptune in Pisces, in his 11th house, described his confused and mixed experiences, though, in the study of spiritualism. Among these was the famed magician Henry Houdini, who was Doyle's good friend for a while, and then became a bitter enemy following an argument regarding a seance. It all revolved around this item, which is a seance trumpet. It's a tin trumpet through which spirit entities are thought to speak and manifest. There's a biblical reference to the trumpet. And in ethical hands, it has been proven to be a real tool that can be used to communicate with the other side. But regrettably, for mediums who weren't ethical at the time, who used stage magic, it was used in that regard. And of course, Houdini spotted that right away, and A. Conan Doyle didn't want to admit that. Doyle's moon phase was the disseminating phase. That is a waning moon disseminating information. It indicates an inventive and liberal nature. His moon at 0 Aquarius was exactly 120 degrees. That's an aspect called a trine from his 0-degree Gemini sun. This is called the darling of the gods aspects by astrology, and it is a particularly blessing to have a sun-moon trine. It gives great recuperative powers and great good luck. The part of fortune, an Arabic point in the birth chart, the tiny planet Chiron, named for the teacher of Achilles, and the moon's north node are also all in Aquarius, underscoring his interest in the abnormal, humanities, psychology, gadgets, and inventions. Doyle's Aquarius placements span his 9th and 10th houses. This indicates fame and notoriety. The 10th house is the high noon, overhead prominent part, and the 9th house is the higher mind. Placements clustered there in the birth chart show intellectual prowess, foreign travel, and the ability to make a mark in the world. Sir Arthur and Lady Doyle traveled to the United States, where they were wildly popular. They went to Europe, New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, all of this by ship. There weren't airplanes then, quite a bit of travel. And their lectures involved afterlife experiences and evidence of the paranormal. The crystal ball as a gazing focus would have been an item we would have found at their seances and presentations, looking into the crystal and seeing clouds unfold, different images. That would have all been inherent in their presentations. Doyle wrote extensively about these experiences and topics during the early 20th century. In later life, he held seances every night at his home. Seances are sessions where groups of people gather around a table and often a crystal ball, always candles, a trumpet would be present, in order to create an atmosphere to actually welcome spirit visitors in. Doyle supported a psychic bookstore, library, and museum. He passed into spirit on July 7th of 1930. A few days later, on July 13th, a famed medium of the day, Estelle Roberts, brought messages which the family validated as coming from the other side. He had finally joined the spirit entities on the other side. They called him the Old Fighter, which was a family nickname, and everybody validated that at a memorial reception as him visiting in the empty chair which had been left for him. Very often a formal dinner party will have an empty chair, and it's for the unexpected or uninvited guest, but it has a tie with welcoming in spirit entities, and there's a special sort of spirit meeting called a dumb or silent supper, where an empty chair is left for loved ones in spirit, while those of us who are here on the earth plane enjoy a physical meal. And the essence of the food and the camaraderie and companionship will welcome back the entities around us. So we welcome the spirit of A. Conan Doyle and ask that possibly he might join us. Very quickly, I'm going to read his astrological placements for our listeners who would like to set up his horoscope. His sun was 0 Gemini in the 12th house, moon 0 Aquarius in the 9th house, Mercury 5 Taurus, 12th house, Venus 27 Aries, 12th house. Mars was 18 Gemini, 12th house but near the ascendant, Jupiter 25 Gemini in the 1st house. Saturn was 0 Leo in the 3rd house, Uranus 3 Gemini in the 12th house, Neptune 26 Pisces in the 11th house, Pluto 7 Taurus in the 12th house, Chiron 22 Aquarius, 12th house, North Node of the Moon, 10th house, part of Fortune, 10th house, ascendant or rising sign was Gemini. He had a very, very large 12th house because he was born so far north. The curvature of the earth supports that. For those listeners who are wondering how and why so many placements were in that part of the zodiac. This is Dickie Jo Mullen sharing the horoscope of the real Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.